There we go. All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to day two, session one of the J Champions Conference for 2024. My name is Michael Redlick. I'm one of the co-directors at the Garden State Java User Group in beautiful Madison, New Jersey. I live in Flemington. But I'm happy to introduce Anton Arapov. He's a Kotlin developer advocate over at JetBrains, and he's going to talk about IntelliJ idea tips and tricks. So with that, Anton, please take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michael. So hello, everybody, and let's dive into all kind of tips and tricks about IntelliJ this time. Uh, I suppose that a lot of folks who are watching the stream are actually using IntelliJ. So my goal today is not to do the basics. I will cover some of the basics, but I will skip over a lot of stuff, and I will cover a few topics, a few major topics that I think could be interesting to the most of the audience. Let's say if you have any questions, type them in the chat. We'll try to address them as we go, but I don't promise anything if I can, in details answer your questions on the spot without disturbing my plan. So we're gonna cover the ID, configuring the ID a little bit for productivity, because I think it's some of the things are quite important, and we do have some productivity tricks there. Writing code, obviously, you will see some interesting code completions and refactorings. I think debugger is a very nice thing in the IDE, and there are quite a few interesting moments and unusual and unexpected features in the debugger. And if time permits, we're gonna dive into more static and code analysis, some advanced features like language injection and database support. So, but before I go into the IDE, I actually want to show you one little productivity trick with the app called toolbox. So if you are using multiple versions of the ID or multiple IDs by JetBrains, uh, toolbox is the app that allows installing all of them. As you see, I have like IntelliJ IDEA stable version, and then I have ultimate version, which is an EAP early access program version. This is what I'm running right now, so expect unexpected, may crash, but it's fun. Why not? Why not to show off some of the new features that might be experimental? Besides just the tools listed here that you can install from JetBrains, we also list the projects that you can pin for your convenience, and assign some fun icon. This is what I did. So for this specific project, IntelliJ Tips and Tricks, I have this little bulb icon that displays right in the Toolbox app, but also in the header of my ID. And well, I can easily locate my projects this way. Um, okay, so much about the Toolbox app. We are in IntelliJ, and this is how the new UI looks like. We started the new UI project quite a while ago, and recently we turned it into a default. So the classic UI is still there. You can switch it back, but by default, you're gonna see uh, the same UI as I have. And I know that a lot of folks actually use dark theme, and that's the default. I'm using the light theme because that's just my preference. But you can easily switch between themes from this menu right here, and install even more different themes as you like. So if you noticed, when I press anything, something like I don't know, Alt F7 maybe, on the bottom here I have shortcuts visible. So there's a little pop-up showing you the keystroke that I just pressed. Today your goal is not to learn the shortcuts, but if you rewatch the video, you're gonna see which keystroke I actually pressed, and maybe it will help you, in some way. Uh, Besides this, you might have noticed that I don't have any tabs. So normally, uh, there is a tab placement by default where we open all the tabs, all the files on the top, but they pile up, they start shift out of the screen. And I noticed that over time, when I started using shortcuts for navigation, I kind of the need for the tabs for me in the editor kind of diminished. So I set it to none, and basically I only have uh, the single file on the screen, and everything I need I can access via Command E shortcut, the recently opened files, and I can also get access to the tool views like the project view or the debug view and so on. Of course, I can remember the shortcuts for each individual tool view, but mostly I navigate through this menu, and only if I need to go to the project view, I can open it with Command 1. And well, that's because I do it often. I do remember that. Uh, when navigating through the project window, you might have different preferences, how you want it to behave. So, for instance, I know that some people would like to open the files when they click with the mouse once, and they would prefer the file open in the editor once. So it's also possible. So, like open files with a single click, if I enable this option, I can just click and open. That's very fast. But for my specific case, like how I use it, if I use it with arrow keys, like it starts to jump, and I prefer not to enable this option. Um, so I don't do that. Instead, if I need to preview the file, I can just select whatever is in the project view and hit space and preview the individual contents of each file as I scroll through the project tree. Done. So these are very little kind of trick tips for you to get around, and once you start being proficient with it, like navigating through the Command E shortcut, you realize that you don't really need to have the project view open. You don't need the tool views, and you can go into this distraction-free productivity mode where everything is accessible, everything is on your fingertips via the little shortcuts. And when you really need to go into the full mode, there is a shortcut to go back, right? So what I did currently is switching between the distraction-free mode and normal mode, and there are the um, view options in the appearance submenu. So the presentation mode, distraction-free mode, and Zen mode is where you remove everything, even the status bar from the bottom. Okay, this much about the navigation and the setup. There's definitely more, but we gotta save some time and learn some other interesting tricks. What I'm going to show now is I'm going to be writing some code slowly for demonstrating each individual small piece that the IDE provides for writing this code to me. And for the demo, I'm going to write a program that is reading a file line by line, does something with the lines, and well, somehow outputs the result. And normally, if we start writing the code, we start with the main method, right? So how do we do that? We have live templates in the IDE, so like code snippets, you can call them. PSVM was the classical name to generate the main method in IntelliJ. But since the IDE was evolving and we acquired new users, it became apparent that it's probably not too obvious for them to type PSVM. Instead, main is a good name, and we have like a substitute for the original one now. So we get a main method. Basically, what I did, I generated the main method using live template. We're gonna dive into live template a little bit later, but if you have questions about them, feel free to ask. And Now our task is to read the file, right? How do we read the file? In a very classical way, ages ago, when we didn't have like utility methods in the recent version that came in the recent versions of Java, we always used buffered reader. Boom, buffered reader. Uh, let me actually close this piece of text right here. Let's see, like this. Yeah, buffered reader. What is the hardest problem in computer science? Naming. So the IDE can help with that as well. Uh, Reader equals. Now we need to assign a variable. How can we do that? Since we're in Java, it always starts with new. Is it? No. Sometimes it's also a factory method and so on. So there are options in how we prefer to write code. It can be the new, and then the IDE will most likely guess what we are going to do and suggest like a buffered reader to us. Or we can immediately, without typing new, ask for type aware completion using Control Shift Space to complete the most relevant option for us. And it's going to be the buffered reader. Buffer reader takes the file reader. File reader takes either a new file or just a file name. I'm going to make this longer on purpose. So don't yell at me if I'm really writing some ugly code there. It's for showing the ID features this time. So new file, some file.txt. All right. Now we are standing in the end of this line, kind of. The statement is complete, but there is a compilation error. We need to fix it. If you have used IntelliJ for some time, you know that Alt Enter is this magical shortcut that can fix it for you. But for that, you need to jump on a specific place where it's broken, right? So we can either just use a mouse and click there. We can use arrow keys. We can hold Option and then use arrow keys to quick there faster, or we can use F2 shortcut to navigate to the error, to any error in the file. And then we are able to hit Alt Enter with the options for how we can fix it. So there are multiple options. In this case, I'm going just to add the declaration into the method signature. Good. So moving on, we fixed the line. It looks longish. Why did I do this kind of? Why did I write this kind of long line here with a lot of nesting? Is that because I wanted to show you how actually what I can do with it now. We were standing right here, right? So when the error was corrected, we don't have any errors anymore, and F2 is going to jump over the warnings, and this single warning that we have is that the new file is redundant. But well, I added it on purpose to show some nesting, and if we stand somewhere in the very deep place in that nesting, we can call, let's say, extract variable refactoring, and you see it suggests us multiple ways on how to extract the variable from here. Good. Let it be just a separate variable, just for fun. We were typing a few strokes here, and we just learned about some of the shortcuts. Let's try typing the statements in a little bit different way. So before that, we were typing from left to right. Now let's see if what I can do when I'm typing from right to left. So I will be writing the right hand side of the expression first, and then complete it like fully. So I'm going to read the lines into a collection. My favorite collection is array list, obviously, array list. And it's going to be an array list of strings. And now, when I have this right-hand side of the expression, I can actually use either the refactoring, command option V to extract the variable or introduce a new variable, or I can use postfix completion, var, like this, which is kind of something in the middle. between the refactoring action and live templates. So it does the same thing in this specific case when I extract a variable. So let's go back and do the same trick again, but using the extract variable action. When I do that, I have some options. So it gives me a few names, and it already decided that I need the type list of strings, but maybe just for some reason, maybe I can change that. So I can actually go back using Shift Tab on this placeholder and select whatever type I want. In this case, I'm not going to change anything. And what I want you to notice here is that every pop-up, like almost every pop-up that you see in the IDE or the dialog, has some hints for you. So on the bottom there, it tells that you can press Option Shift O to show pop-up to show more options for this refactoring. So if I do that, Option Shift Tab, Option Shift O, sorry, it provides me a few other options like declare final, or I can declare it as a var type using type inference. And how do I click that without the mouse? So I can hold Option, and you see there are some understrokes appearing under F and V characters. So if I say Option V, it's going to click that, and we'll see that now it's declared as final. Okay, that's a nice little trick. Good. So now we have a collection where to store the lines that we are going to read from the file. When we are reading this, we're going to need an intermediate variable, a temporary variable, to read every next line into. And we're going to read the lines in a loop one by one. So line equals. How do we know how do we read the next line from the reader? So we either can ask the IDE to suggest what options at all we have in this specific place, like using type-aware completion. And well, you see, I pressed Control Shift Space, and it suggests that read line is probably a good option in this case. Yes, that's what I was looking for. Or optionally, if we know exactly what we are doing and we just need to get to the result faster, there is an awesome completion implemented for Java by the first letter. So if we type just the first letter of the variable and the dot and the first letter of the method name, chances are very high that we get what we are looking for. So r.r gets me to the read line. Okay, shouldn't be null, and we complete the statement. Now, again, we know how to fix the error, but we need to jump to that place to fix the error. F2 gets us there. Click Alt-Enter, and we have options again how to fix that. Well, you see, if I add it to a method signature, if I add a declaration of that exception to a method signature, it's an IO exception, so it's kind of redundant to have file not found exception in the same declaration. So it's gonna just replace that IO. Okay, now we know that we just read the line from the file. We have a string, and we need to add that string into our collection. So we know that awesome completion s.a gets us to string.add. And then we just can, complete the statement. And here we can either invoke statement completion using Command Shift Enter, or just type semicolon, because there is no other way or no other option. Why would you need that in this place? The IDE will just take the semicolon to the end of the code line. So I'm typing semicolon, boom, and it actually jumped to the very end of the string and added this semicolon there. Okay. What if the file contains empty lines? We're gonna add some logic. What logic will be there? We gotta check if the line is not empty, and only then add it to the collection. So basically, we need to surround the current statement with an if statement here, and there is a shortcut for that, for surrounding the statements with some live template. In this case, it will be an if block. And here I can just, type the first letters again, is empty or is blank. And now let's see what happens if I not just complete the statement or the whatever the option I was provided in with the completion menu, but if I type an exclamation mark. So if I just completed this statement, it turns out that I'm going to add just the empty lines into my collection. This should be vice versa, right? I should add not empty collections into not empty lines into my collection. So, but we need the exclamation mark in the beginning of this expression. So if I have this completion list in front of me, and whatever option I selected returns a Boolean, I can complete this suggestion by using exclamation mark and see what is going to happen. Um, it added the exclamation mark into the beginning of the expression, but the cursor is still at the end of the expression. There is a question about the difference for control space and control shift space. Those are two completions, and I know that a lot of folks are confused by it. So control space is just normal completion. As you know, like if I type S, I can just uh, let's say I have S and I type the normal completion control space, and just by the first letter, it will say, okay, you started typing S. There's something in your surrounding code that starts with S, specifically the variable strings. So probably that's the best option. Then we have options for the keywords, and then we have something else like live templates and so on. For type aware completion, or the control shift space or command shift space, as we say, no, control shift space, sorry. When you declare something as string, let's say we have a new variable, on the left, we know the type. And now, using the type aware completion, control shift space, we can ask the IDE to provide the best option possible to match that type. So in this case, if I do that, I can see, okay, line is the closest variable that matches this type. But if I do that twice, control shift space, 1, 2, uh, the IDE will scan the whole universe that belongs to your project, the APIs, the classes that may return the type that you're looking for, and then provide you the list of options. Well, there is some heuristics how it's sorted. And regarding sorting, it's a good segue. In this specific list that we see, there is, you can see two arrows, the green one and the red one. This list of options that you get by the completion is dynamic. So it's not always the same order of options that you see. The green arrow means that this option has been moved, it moved to the higher probability, and the red one means that it's now a lower priority. For whatever reason, there is a machine learning kind of engine built into the IDE specifically for ranging the auto suggestions in auto completion. It's disabled by default, but you can enable it in the settings in completion, code completion, and there is a machine learning assisted completion option that works for a few languages. It doesn't send any data out of your computer. It works locally, like with some math, and it's I find it very useful if you're actively writing code, if you're actively using auto completion. It actually is a big helper. Okay, so what else could we do? We gotta speed up here a little bit. Uh, Iterate over something or do any conversions or anything. For instance, converting between arrays and collections. That was pretty often the case when I was writing the code using different libraries. One library uses collections for the API, and the other one is using arrays, and I have to convert them. So there is a live template for that. 2R actually generates a code snippet, and then if I needed to convert my strings array into a strings collection into an array, I basically could do it like this. Or again, I could use type aware completion equals control shift space twice, and it gives me the option that, hey, strings could be converted to an array using this method and this parameter. That's pretty quick. Or we mentioned live templates multiple times already. So how do you get to the list of live templates? Command J, and there you can search for by the description, like iterate, or do something else. Or if you already know them by heart, they are actually in the completion options. There are a few very useful ones like main or if, or uh, generating some output, for instance. So out gets me just the print line statement, but if I need to um, print out some variable with some string, there are templates for that as well. We're going to see that in a moment. Or when I iterate over the collections, like iter, uh, and it expands into this loop like this. And for instance, I would like to print out a template using this intermediate variable, then I can generate it with a sout v. In fact, it also works with postfix completions. So hello, like this, var or sout. So it generates a statement for me. Okay, so we have a few lines of code now. It probably isn't the best code that could be written for this task. What if we hit Alt Enter a few times? I have a saying that when in doubts, hit Alt Enter and see what it can suggest. So Alt Enter here. Maybe use a for each method here. Maybe we can do something with the loop as well. Instead of looping, we could use the stream API. And even better, we have slightly better collectors now. We have two lines, the declaration and assignment, separated by just an empty line. We probably can just merge those two lines. Control Shift J actually merges them. It just doesn't move one line next to each other, but instead you will see it actually merges them. So there is no like a semicolon in the middle. What else? Buffer reader probably needs to be closed correctly. So try with resources is a good option to have. Now, well, I would love Java to have expressions for the try blocks like this, but well, we cannot have all the nice things. So instead, probably I will just extract this part into a separate method. Why not? Get strings, and then we probably don't need this, and just return this line, and we don't need the return statement. Nice. So we've been writing quite some for quite some time, and we got to 5 lines of code. But well, we have learned quite a few things about the ID shortcuts and features and intentions. Now it's probably time to learn something about the debugger, I think. Yeah, let's do that. We have a stream chain right here, right? When we got them in Java 8, people started overusing them quite a lot and putting all the expressions on a single line. And it became quite hard to debug, actually. But our ID folks did some really nice improvements in this part. And let me demonstrate that. So if we have one expression right here, but what if we have more, like something duplicate? Let's say we don't want any blank lines. We don't want lines which are shorter than 3 symbols. Um, no, not lines, but length. Sorry, length. Maybe we want lines that start with something else than A. Uh, let's say L starts with A and or doesn't start with A. So you see there is like a very long expression that doesn't fit into the screen. And when we set a breakpoint on this line, starting version 2024.1, you will see those disabled little breakpoints right inside of the expression. You can click on them to enable. So we have a line breakpoint, but we also have a lambda expression breakpoint. So you don't need to break your expression into separate lines, which probably advocates for a little, not so nice style. But still, when you don't have an option to change the code, it's pretty useful. Imagine you are debugging someone else's code in the library and you just cannot change it. So when we run this uh, thing, when we hit the breakpoint, we have an option. We can just step over the line and get the result. But what if we need to debug the individual steps in that chain? So F7 is the step into action in this place. If I press that button, the ID will ask, where do I want to go? Either jump into an expression or some other place. You see, like I can choose. Maybe I can just jump into this place. Why not? Boom. So I am on that in that location, and then I'm going to jump over the different expressions and see how they evaluate. It's nice. You might find it useful in some cases, but in many cases, you just need to visualize and understand the logic of how the data flows um, through the stream chain. And for that, we have an action called trace current stream chain action. So if you press that, it actually will evaluate the contents of the stream and show you how the values are propagated. You see, like we have a few values in the beginning, and then at the end we have just 2. So that's a very nice feature that we have in the debugger. Since we already started talking about the debugger, let's proceed with that. You see, since it's an AAP version, I have some errors popping up. So why not to report the issues to the team right away? Let's see. We have a debugger class where I have a multiple small demos in my project. But actually, before we go into debugger, I have a few other editor tricks for you. So you see, I have been using folding already, and you probably know about folding in the IDE for comments, for methods, for classes. If you just press command dot, it kind of flops a block of code. But you can have custom regions as well. So here I declare a region called hello, and there is an end of the region. And if I flop that one, then you just see it as rendered as a like a highlighted label. If I expand it, I see it all, and I can actually surround blocks of code with regions, with custom regions as I want. Block of code, and then have nested regions as well. And since it's a structural element, there is an access to all the fold regions in my file, and they become also structural elements for the whole file. We can see the structure here. So, for instance, in this file, I have the breakpoints class, lambdas. We have a few main methods because I'm going to execute everything from this file. But also the custom code regions are displayed as separate elements here. This pop-up actually resembles everything that we have in the structure view. So if I go to a structure view, structure, it's here. But it's especially interesting when you work with some structured files, for instance, some XMLs like result. So if I do that on this one, you can see I can just browse the contents of the file structurally, not just in the editor. Okay, let's go back to the debugger. We already talked about debugging the lambda expressions and the stream chains. What I want to talk about and give you a little bit of tips and tricks, share a little bit of tips and tricks in the debugger is mostly about breakpoints. Often people think that the only thing breakpoint is for is just to set it on the line and suspend the execution in the debugger. Actually, you can do more. And there are multiple options and multiple types of breakpoints. So imagine we can set a breakpoint on a method signature. So whenever method is invoked, we can, stop right there. Historically, developers avoid using those breakpoints because they slow down execution of your program so much. But in IntelliJ, by default, these breakpoints are emulated. So they are not actually the runtime method breakpoints, but they are emulated. So the IDE creates the user experience around this kind of places for you to think of it as if it's a method breakpoint, but it actually isn't. If you struggle with that, if something doesn't work, then you can go to the original runtime behavior, but I haven't heard of any issues with them. So it's pretty stable and it can be emulated, and it's fast. So there is just no reason to disable them or not use them for performance issues. So why is it useful? Uh, Imagine we want to intercept any invocations of base interface methods. So any implementation that implements that interface, we want to intercept. It's easy to set the breakpoints, especially knowing that there are just two implementations. So we could just, set the breakpoint in the beginning of the implementation for each of the derivatives of that base interface. But imagine if there is not two, but 200. So setting a breakpoint to each of them is kind of hard. But let's see how it works. So the bool method, we can see it's being used here, and let's see how it behaves. So if we run, it hits the implementation, not the interface, as you see, and by the frame stack, we can see that it was invoked from this main method. Uh, well, it's a nice feature on its own, but is it like useful? If we didn't know about this feature, we would just set a breakpoint right in this place, run to this line, hit F7, and just step into that method and get to the same place as we got in the previous example when we used the method breakpoint. But that's only when we know the code and we know exactly where how it's running. So if we just execute the code here, you see there is a string. So imagine the situation that you don't see that this component or this function or this class is being used, but you clearly see the behavior that reveals that this class should be used. So remember the string hello from somewhere. If I go into the implementations of this base interface, I will see that in one of them, there is this hello from somewhere string being printed, but how come we don't see that it's being used? Let's investigate. So we set a breakpoint on this method and run the debugger, and we clearly hit the invocation of the foo method. How come the IDE didn't know that it is being used? The reason is let's discover the stack trace. The foo was invoked from the previous frame, do something, and it was invoked using the reflection. So the name, when we use reflection, the name of the method could be not just a constant, but a result of an expression. And well, the static analysis might not be able to catch that, but in the debugger, we can catch everything. All right. What else are the breakpoints useful for, and what are the other options that we have right there? So imagine this kind of code here. We have a workflow, and the workflow starts with the process, passes an ID, and it invokes a few steps one after another. So the process calls step one, step one calls step two, and passes the variable along. And then there is a fork, like step three and step four are invoked from step two. And then the whole execution converges in the output method, where it prints something depending on some condition. And when we are navigating code like this, like you are investigating what is happening with my ID, when you get to the very deep nesting in your code, then you don't even remember how you got there. It would be nice to visualize it somehow. So for that, we have analyze data flow to here, and it visualizes all the branches in my code that were using this ID from the very beginning, and how we got there. And obviously we have the other action that visualizes it forward from this place, and I'm calling the action analyze data flow from here, and it's going to visualize that as well, including the returning of this ID. So how is it related to debugging? Let's see. First of all, we can set a breakpoint at some place where we have a condition, and if we just run it, or actually debug, data flow analysis is helpful. Now it's kicking in the debug session, and it helps us to analyze the code as we debug, highlighting that, hey, the ID is 1, 2, 3, 4, meaning that this condition evaluates to true, meaning that this branch is not going to be executed. So this is a combination of dynamic and static analysis together, which might be very helpful. Another trick that we can do with the breakpoints is when we are setting it, there are some settings, some checkboxes at first. For instance, this suspend checkbox. Of course, we can just disable the breakpoint. If we don't want to unset it, we can just disable so it's not active. But let's pretend we don't do that, and we sometimes want to let's do it in the other place, or actually no, right here, still right here. So we don't want to suspend the execution for some reason. We probably just want to execute some action uh, in this place. What kind of action can we do? We can evaluate and log the expression. So for instance, do something like this: result, no, the ID is, and then ID. So we get a evaluate the expression to a string, and it's going to be logged in the debug session, but the execution will not stop. So it's like debugging with print line statements, but not going to add the print line statements into my code. Let me execute that. There is a question if we can remove all the breakpoints at once. Yes, you can. You can go, for instance, into favorites. No, wait, bookmarks. Bookmarks. Sorry, was it? Yeah, bookmarks. There are breakpoints, and you can just like select and delete whatever you want, or the dialog for all the breakpoints gets you the same list by categories and groups. Just select them and delete. Okay, so we executed the debugger without stopping, and you see it evaluated the expression that I added into the breakpoint. What else are those expression or those non-suspendable breakpoints could be used for? Um, for instance, I want to stop at the breakpoint right in this method, but you have seen that this workflow is pretty complex, and there are multiple branches. So what if I'm only interested in stopping at that breakpoint only if this method is invoked through the step 4 branch? So one option, obviously, if you don't know how to use the settings, is to set the breakpoint in step 4, wait until it hits, and then release this breakpoint and set the other one. Might not always work, and might not get you to the same results as you expect because of the concurrency issues. So some other thread hits the same breakpoint, without hitting step 4. What we can do is to add another breakpoint to this location right here, or into step 4, however you like, and say that it's gonna be a non-suspending breakpoint, but it's gonna be active. So just the fact that the execution hits that line will be recorded into the debugger, and we can use it as a condition for some other breakpoint which I'm interested in. So if I go to the options, I'm going to configure this breakpoint on line 43 as disabled until the debugger hits the other one, the non-suspending breakpoint. So if I run this program again, I'm going to hit this line. I'm going to hit this breakpoint, and I can verify if it was executed by step 4 just by browsing the frames in the stack frame, right? So step 4 is there. Obviously, this is exactly what we needed. Okay, so static analysis was helping us, in multiple places, and it's always kicking in. Where else it's useful is when you're using the inspections, and IntelliJ features around 1,000 of different inspections for different technologies, not only Java, but Kotlin, SQL, JavaScript frameworks, and so on. And you can run individual inspections if you need, like to check the code duplication or anything else. And in the settings, you can find it inspections. There's this full list. Some of them are enabled by default. Some of them are a little bit more hitting on performance and therefore are disabled, or it just can become too noisy for you and you decide, okay, the quality of the code that I see in the editor is not worth paying attention, so I can just disable some of the inspections. So there is a default profile for this set of inspections, and you can choose to choose your own set of those inspections however you like, or and you can execute inspection by name, inspection Spec- inspection by name, run inspection by name. So we just, can find vulnerable API usage and so on. But using those inspections just on your machine might not lead you to the overall quality of the project. So for that, people were asking us to add a way to use the same inspections in the CI environment. And lately, we came up with a solution how to do that. We added a new tool called Kadana, which is actually a separate tool. But since we are in the IDE, and the IDE kind of is the core feature for that product, we are using all the same inspections, repackaging them, the engines, into Docker containers that you can use in the CI. But in the IDE, you can use all the same configuration to set it all up. And if I let me actually open the other project right here, that's the Spring Pet Clinic. Um, and if I run uh, the server-side analysis, first of all, the wizard will give me the configuration file, but that's for CI only. And like there, I can enable or disable the specific inspections that are included into the overall set, into the profile of all the inspections. I can configure the license rules and decide which JDK version I need to execute in the CI environment. And once I run it, it runs, and it's pretty quick on the local machine because my ID is already running. It already indexed the whole project. It knows about the project, so it can just execute and scan for the places and execute the checks, and it gives me the initial report for possible problems in my code. But the cool part is that now I can inspect how it's going to look in the CI environment. So it's much quicker. If I clicked this open Kadana report in browser page, in fact, what happened, it took me to this page, this dashboard, where I can now browse the issues and decide whether or not these are important and should I do something about them. There's a huge number of inspections included into the profile, and if I want to enable any of them, it is going to change my configuration file. And after I commit to the version control system, all the changes to the configuration file will be in the version control, and the CI server can then pick it up and generate the reports, and then you will be able to monitor the health of the project, continuously with the team using the same set of inspections from the ID on the server. Okay, it looks like we have 5 minutes left. I do have a bunch of other tips and tricks to share, but I think it would be nice to go to questions if there are any more.
Yeah, we had, although somebody answered the one, but I'll display it for you
Uh huh.
right there. about a shortcut for increasing or decreasing the font size.
Oh, yeah, depending on which operating system you use. For instance, I'm on Mac. I have a laptop, and then I can use touchpad just to uh, zoom in and zoom out, like for like individual file, or I can use the overall zoom option, and just to go to 125 or like 150, whatever it works for you.
So yeah, Anka Bremer actually provided that information as well. I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Mhm.
Let's see. So next, um, how to save the settings when I change the workspace.
How to save the settings? Like all the settings in of your project, they are saved under the .idea directory. Mm, it's pretty often the case, since this is a big directory. There is a lot of settings, and there's a little bit mixed. Like some of the things you don't want to commit to the version control, and some of the things you do want to put into the version control. There is a documentation page for all those settings, but literally, if you have these run configurations, you add some VM options for running the project, and these VM options are stored in the uh, run configurations. Yeah, I probably will not find the file immediately, but somewhere under this catalog, right?
And this was a little bit earlier today. I figured I'd wait till the end, but it's kind of a fair question. I must admit I'm a big fan of IntelliJ, but so John asks, why don't I just use VIM, Emacs, or Helix editor?
Oh, well, it's a fair question. Totally. If you feel more productive with Vim, go for it. Some people prefer to have just a snappy editor and use command line tools for everything else, like working with Git. I feel like shooting myself into a foot when I have to work with Git in a command line environment. So I'm probably just too old for that. I would prefer to use that from a graphical user interface. All the inspections that are provided by the IDE and other integrations make my life easier. But again, I think it's a matter of my matter of taste, and how do you feel. If you feel productive with the tool you have, I think you should stick with it and just learn it better.
Yeah, I must admit, for some scripts or something like that, I will use VI.
Yes, exactly the
Well,
same.
yeah, showing my age too, but that's how many people use VI.
I'm a long time VI user, but I'm not using Vim plugin in the IDE. So we do have a Vim mode plugin in IntelliJ, and it's very popular. But myself, for some reason, I couldn't get used to that.
Oh, just missed the okay. Well, I have this one shown. I missed one before that, but yeah, let's.
How do I add external jars optimally in IntelliJ? I can. Um, Let me rephrase the question, probably the way I understand it. If you have a project in IntelliJ and you need to add a jar file, a dependency to that one, you either add a dependency to your Maven pom.xml or a Gradle build file. That's how I would read it. Otherwise, adding a jar file into your project is probably just not the best practice anymore. We used to do that like ages ago. How to do that optimally? Um, I don't know. Maybe you could clarify your question. There are some tips and tricks, like if we have, is it a Maven project here? Like, yeah, imagine I'm adding a dependency and there is a shortcut option, enter. No, Control N probably. Yeah, dependency template. This is what I think is optimal. Adding the dependency quickly. The IDE knows the dependency exists. It knows its coordinates, and kind of helps you with this process.
Yeah. And
How can I
one
import?
final question here. There was
Yeah,
one after that, but someone else in the group actually answered it. So I will make this the final question.
yeah. How can I import more projects inside the same workspace? IntelliJ generally centers the workbench or the workspace around a single project. And if you have more projects, then it opens them. Let me show that. Opens them like this. Well, technically, it's possible to ask them to merge into like manage projects. Sorry, manage projects, and say, ah, okay, sorry, probably I won't find it. But the short story is that the workbench is for a single project. Yes, you can add multiple modules, but the class path will be the same. So imagine if you have the different versions of the same library in the class path, who is going to win? You don't know. This ideology of having multiple projects is centered, like it was the thing in Eclipse, and users were asking for it like many times from us, but IntelliJ project model is just designed this way. The alternative is to try Fleet, the other IDE by JetBrains, and it's kind of redesigned the project model for many different use cases. Now you can open multiple Java projects in the same workbench there, and even not only Java projects, but the others as well.
All right. Well, this was awesome, Anton. Thank you very much. I learned a few things myself. Um, so
Perfect.
yeah,
Then
and
it's
there were
not
a
a
lot of
time wasted.
what? I'm sorry.
Then it's not a time wasted.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
If you learn at least one
right.
thing,
Yes.
then it's not a time wasted.
Absolutely. So this was an awesome session. Our next session is going to be by Holly Cummins. The future of developments are our jobs getting harder or easier, and I'll be moderated by Frank Delport. So until later today, we'll thank you all for coming. We've had a good number of folks from all around the world joining us today. So thanks for letting us know where you're coming in from. So all right.
Right.
Take care.
Bye bye. Bye bye.